Good morning. Welcome to AP Computer Science A. Today we are going to be covering section 2.6 using methods. So make sure that you guys have your notes ready to go. You should also have your replet. Type in your name. Don't forget to click submit once you are done. Now today we are going to be covering using methods. And we are going to be looking at the circle, rectangle, and regular polygon, which are the adhesive uh, classes that they provide in the package. Remember that whenever adhesive uses them, they are going to just import the entire package. But I also want you guys to be able to get a chance to look at the actual code. And remember that you also have it in your notes, and we'll go over that in a few minutes. Now, one of the things that you will notice is that we can actually access the API. The API is the application programming interface that's going to tell us how we can use that specific class. So let's go into the adhesive API, geometric shapes API. So let's go and type in bit.ly, then Java section 2.5, uppercase J, A, V, A, sec 2.5. Do not place underscores. If you place underscores, then it's actually going to take you to the actual class in the code for the class. Same thing that we have on the replit. If you press in here, this is going to take you to the API of those three classes: the circle, the rectangle, rectangle polygon. And on any of the classes, just the same way that we looked at before when we looked at the string class, this is going to tell you information about the class. It's going to tell you the constructors. In this case, we have two constructors. One of them, it doesn't take anything in, so there are no parameters. And another one basically will take a double as a parameter. So you can tell it what is the size of the circle or the radius of the circle. So if you don't type anything in and just leave the parentheses, nothing inside, then the radius automatically will be 1.0. But if you do want a different size, then you can specify by typing in a double when you do new space circle, a number inside, and close it. That will tell it what is the size of the radius. Now, do you remember what do we call when we have two methods, or in this case, we only cover constructors that have they have the same name, but they have different signatures? That is called overloading. So therefore, those two methods are overloaded. They have the same name, but they have taken different parameters. So their signature is different. Remember, the signature is composed of, they need to have, is the name of the class, is the type of parameters, and the number of parameters. In this case, this one has none, and this one has one, which is a double. Then we have all the methods that we can use. We have equal, that will tell us whether two circles are equal to each other. We'll compare them. Get area will give us a double. This is what we're going to call the return type, and we'll come back to that in a few minutes. So this is get area, get circumference, get radius, set radius. So this is going to set the radius. And toString. toString is basically going to be how do we want it to be represented whenever we print it. And then there's a little more detail if you want. They provide a little more detail on each of the methods above. Now, if we go into the replit and we look at the circle, once again, we have the name of the class. Notice there's the import. They imported the map class. The circle is the name of the class. Therefore, this is a constructor, and then this is our second constructor. We have a instance variable, which is the radius. Then we have our methods here all throughout. Then we have our equal that will determine whether two circles are equal to each other. Don't worry about this too much. We can simplify a little more. And I did simplify, let's see now. In this case, this is a two-string. So therefore, whenever we print a circle, it's going to say circle with radius and then the radius. Now, if you go into your notes, you'll notice go over to before section 2 point right here, 2.5, between 2.4 and 2.5. You also have your circle class. And notice that the circle class is made out of the class name, the instance field, and it's called an instance field because it has constructor. So whenever we create a circle, we are making an instance of the class or an object. The instance of the class, so therefore it's called instance field. We'll go over this later on in chapter 5, unit 5. Then we have your two constructors. Then we have methods. We have two types of methods. We have mutator methods or setter methods. Same thing. Sometimes they call it mutator, sometimes they call it setter. Basically, we're going to change the information. It's going to set the radius. So this is the one that we're going to use in a few minutes. And accessor methods, basically we're just accessing information from the class, or it's called getter methods as well. Accessor, getter methods. We basically can get the radius, we get the area, or we can get the circumference. So notice that they're going to calculate and it's going to provide it for us. So we are getting information from the method. We have our two-string simplified, circle with radius, and then the radius. And we have our equal, which will return true or false. So let's go over and start coding, right? So we are going to type our code into the bin. Don't mess up with the other code. So let's start by constructing a circle. So let's go and say circle. Remember that's the name of the class. The name of the variable, let's go and say C1 equal. We're going to call the constructor, so therefore we're going to say new. And circle once again. This is going to decide which constructor are we going to use, the first one or the second one. Remember, if we use the first one, the radius will be 1.0. And now if we print system.out.println C1, and this is what we did last time. Whenever we print, it's going to use the toString method, which is down here. It's going to say circle with radius, and then we're going to run it. There you go. Now, let's say we want to be able to change the toString to something different. So let's go say, a circle, we can say a circle with radius. So the toString is used to be able to print that information every time you print the variable, just the variable itself. You can decide what you want to print. So now, a circle with radius 1.0. So that's how that information gets printed. So this is constructing the circle. Now, if we want to be able to have a different size circle, we can actually use the other constructor, and we can say 2.5. So in this case, we are using the second constructor instead of using this constructor here. Where is it? Right here. We're using this one in here, which is going to set the radius to whatever we provided. Now, remember that this is the parameter and this is the argument. You can go back and forth. Now, let's assume that we want to be able to change the size of the circle. So let's say that we actually just created a circle with radius 1.0, and we want to be able to change the size of the circle. So therefore, we're going to get the handle, which is C1, the name of the variable, the name of the object, the name of the instance of the variable, of the instance of the class. And now we are going to use, which method are we going to use? Let me go into my documentation. or I can actually go into my documentation. Let's go into the other documentation on the web. You can use either one. So in this case, we have our circle. If I want to go to change it, I can get the area. We can set the radius to a new, so we can use this one here, or we can also go back to your notes, and we're going to do a mutator, and we're going to use this method here, which is called set radius. So therefore, C1, we're going to set the radius, and then notice that in this case, the set radius, we need to give it a double. So therefore, if you do not provide a double inside, let's see what happens. You get an error. And it says method radius in class circle cannot be applied. Required. You need to require a double. Not sure you guys can read it. So therefore, it needs to have a double. So we can say 2.5. So even after we created the circle with 1.0 first, then we can use the mutator methods to be able to mutate the value of the radius. We can use the setter method, which is the mutator, to set the value of the radius to 2.5. And that is what happens when we use mutator methods. Now, one of the things that we need to be able to distinguish is when do we actually get information back. So notice that on set radius, the only thing that it's doing is basically just using set radius. It sets the radius to circle to the specified radius. And notice this keyword here, void. Void means that you're not going to return anything. And if you actually go into the method here, notice that in this case, this is what this word means. Basically, it means that we are not going to return any information. We don't need to send anything back. So whenever you use the set radius, we are replacing that radius with 2.5. But if we actually go into the code called set radius, notice there's the keyword void. Void means that you are not going to return anything back. Don't worry about this whole throw new exceptions. We're not going to cover them much in this class. But the void will tell you that you're not sending any information back. So therefore, we're not receiving any information from here. We're just going to replace the radius with 2.5. Now, if we actually, let's go and use a getter method, and let's go and receive information back. So according to our API, if we're going to get the area or the circumference, we are going to get back a double, right? Because we are asking for information, we are getting information, we're accessing information, and that's what they're called accessor methods. Get radius, get area, get circumference. So there's going to be times that we just need to be able to find the area. So if I type in C1 dot get area, and remember that do I need to type anything inside? According to our API, get area requires nothing inside. Set radius requires a double as the parameter. Get area requires nothing inside, so therefore I don't need to type anything in. And let's go and run it. Yeah, but we didn't use area. We need to be able to, if we're going to get it, that means probably we need to be able to save it into a variable. Let's say what type of variable is it going to return? An int. And let's go and call area equal. And let's go and say, let's just run it first. Hold on, there's something going on. Incompatible types, right? Because get area is going to return a double. Or what is it? It's going to return a double. So this is going to be your return type. So therefore, we should be expecting a double, and we cannot place a double into an int. So therefore, this will have to be a double. So that's why it's important for you guys to be able to know how to read the API, the documentation, because you need to be able to say, well, I'm going to use this method called getArea, and that requires nothing for me to as an argument. I don't need to give it any information, but I do need to be able to expect back a double. And therefore, I can go and run it. No error, but let's go and say system.out.println with area is, and if I can place my quotation marks, because that's a string literal, that's area. And now if I run it, then I should be able to get the area of the circle. Now, if you're just going to use the same thing that we've done before, so let's say we're just going to use it, we're not going to save it, we can actually just place it here. And I forgot my C1. So therefore, if we're just going to print it and we're not going to use it for anything else, we can just do as follows. It'll give us the same exact information and will be set to error. Oh, yes, what did you do? Oh, I have an extra semi. You guys see it? And now I should to run it. There. But one of the things that I do want you guys to be able to keep in mind is that this method is going to return the area. And I know that getArea is a method by noticing that there are two open and close parentheses. That is a method. Later on, we're going to talk about getting information from fields, but for now, let's leave it as that. Any questions? Now let's go and go over, if I want to be able to modify this, I can change to anything else. Let's go over and use the other one, which will be a regular polygon. And that way we can talk about overloading. That is the next thing that we need to talk about. So let's go and just, we're just going to, I can comment this out. Let's go and comment this out. Sometimes if I don't want to get rid of things, I can just comment them out. And that way I still have them, and I can also refer back to them. Or sometimes if I don't want to, if I just want to be able to do a whole block of code, I want to be able to comment, I can just do this. Here, starting here and ending here. And that way I can comment an entire block of code, which will be easier. And let's go and construct a regular polygon. So let's say a regular polygon. Let me just tab first. And let's look at the constructor. Let's look at the class, correct? Because we need to be able to know what type of constructors we have for the one class. So we can look at the rectangle, but let's just go on to the regular polygon. And notice how many constructors do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So for now, let's just go and do, let's do the last one. Number with the number of sides and then the side length. So let's do a 5-sided. So let's go and say P1. And new, let's call the constructor regular polygon. The numbers. And then 5-sided, right? And now let's go and print system.out uppercase S system.out.println, and let's go and print P1. Remember that whenever we print P1, it's basically going to be calling the toString. Let's go under the regular polygon. Let's look at the toString. What does it say for toString? toString. Where is toString? It's coming up equals outsides toString right here. So notice that's going to print polygon with sides and the specific name. We'll go over this some other time. But that's basically what is going to get this information. And let me go and click on run. And what did I do wrong? I did something wrong. Can you guys tell me, what did I do wrong? Correct. So one of the things that you have to be careful is that the fact that it takes two numbers, it wants that integer first and the double. So it needs to be in the specific order. And we covered this last time, correct? So therefore I need it to be a 5-sided polygon. And I want it to be a 4.5 will be the length. And now we can run it. So it's a regular pentagon with side length of 4.5. Now, if you want to be able to change the sides, so we can go into the documentation to be able to see what methods we can use. And notice that we have at sides, we have two methods that have the same name. What is that called? That is called overloading. So those two methods are overloaded. They have the same name, but the signatures are different. Remember, the signatures are made up by the name, the number of parameters, and the type of parameters, and of course the order of the. So in this case, I can add sides. If I just use this method without any arguments, then it's going to increase the number of sides by 1. If I do use this method, then I can say I want how many more, increase the number of sides by the polygon by the given number. So let's see, let's go and add 1. So let's go and I'm going to print this out. Then I'm going to add 1. Now, do I need to save it somewhere? Is it going to return anything if I add 1? Well, let's look at the documentation once again. It's not going. It says void. Void means that we are not going to receive anything back whenever we call the method. So I don't need to save it anywhere. So be P1 is the name of the polygon dot, and it's called add sites, and we're going to place nothing inside. Therefore, we have, let's go and print it out. And let's go and print P1. Let's go and run it. At first, it was a pentagon. Then we added one side. Now it's a hexagon. So let's go and say we're going to call the other method P1 add sides. But now we're going to add 2 more sides or 3 more sides instead of just 1 at a time. And let's go and print it out. And now, first it was 5, then we added 1 more, and then we added 3 more. So now it's a nonagon. And we can actually change the length if we want. If we want to be able to change the length, then we can actually just go into say, okay, which method is going to allow me to change the length? And we can get the length, but we can set the side length. So let's use that one method. P1 set side length. It will be easier if Diaz can just get his act together and just do it here and do it here. Maybe not. Maybe next time. But for now, let me place it back in there. So therefore, if I want to go to set side length, and then it's going to take a double. And let's go and set it to 7.0 or just 7. If I type in 7, it's expecting a double. Will it give me an error? No. That's an integer. And let's just go and print it out. And let's go and run it. Now, if we actually are using one of the getter methods, and let's go and get the perimeter, then we are going to be expecting a double. So in that case, if I do P1 get perimeter, then we do need to save it somewhere. Either we need to do something with it. We can just print it if you want. We can just say system.out. So we can just print it if we want, right? But it doesn't make any sense to just ask for the perimeter and not do anything with it, because we are returning the value. But if we're not doing anything with it, what's the sense? Now, sometimes we just need to be able to save it, so we can say double perimeter is equal to. We can just save it and then use it somewhere else in our code if we need to. That's fine. But if you don't have, if you actually are getting something back, but you're not doing anything with it, it just doesn't make any sense. Now, last thing that I need to cover is this is the Java reference that you guys will be able to use for your APCSA. Notice that once again, this is the string class that we covered so far. We also cover the integer class, but we're going to come back to this on the next lesson. And then we're going to, on 2.8, we're going to cover the math class. And then array less, we're going to cover on semester number 2. But in this case, you want to get used to reading this, because in here, this is the return type, integer length. That means that whenever you do the length, just like we've done on the previous sections, it's going to return an integer that we can either save it or use it somewhere in our code. If you use substring, it's going to return a string. If you use substring, now we have two substrings. What is that called? That's called overloading. So those two methods are overloaded. We have equal that will compare it to see if two strings are equal to each other. We haven't used that much compared to. But notice that there are going to be other methods that are going to be, where's my void? There'll be other ones that will be void. That means that it's not going to return anything. So this is the lesson for today. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time.